According to the World Health Organization, COVID-19 is an infectious disease spread through droplets of saliva or discharge from the nose or mouth. There has been more than 114,000 confirmed cases since the disease's first outbreak in late 2019, increasing the search for an effective vaccine to combat the virus. To learn more about vaccines and how they increase immunity against preventable diseases, visit www.cdc.gov or contact your local health department.
The first vaccine was developed by Edward Jenner in 1796. Using viral material originating from cowpox, he was successfully able to inoculate against the much more deadly and dangerous smallpox. Vaccines work by eliciting an immune response from the body in place of an actual virus that causes the disease. By doing so, vaccines give the body the trigger to develop immunity to an illness that it will never have to endure. The way vaccines elicit an immune response is through antigens. The body uses these antigens to both detect and defend against infection. Infection begins when a virus enters the body and travels through the bloodstream to a target cell. Once located, special proteins on the surface of the virus, so-called spike proteins, will match the corresponding ion channels on the cell membrane and inject viral DNA. The DNA makes its way to the nucleus and hijacks the DNA replication cycle, producing more and more virus. Individual particles of virus, virions, will amass until eventually the host cell explodes, unleashing them into the surrounding area where more target cells lie in wait. This cycle of infection and replication continues until special immune system cells, called killer T cells, which patrol the body, locate a source of infection. They begin to attack the infected cells and leave behind countless viral subunits in their wake. Many of these subunits act as antigens, specifically the spike proteins. Another kind of immune cell, called helper T cells, identify and transport the individual antigens to B cells in the lymph nodes, which then begin to synthesize antibodies to complete the body's immune system response. These antibodies work by attaching to the spike proteins on the surface of the virions before they have the chance to attach themselves to host cells, which renders them useless. After some time, the killer T cells have killed all of the virus-infected cells, and leftover antibodies are taken to memory cells, where they are kept in case of another infection by the same virus, so that they can be quickly replicated for a faster immune response. Today, through the continued advances of science, we have developed numerous vaccines which have helped to save countless lives and even eliminated whole diseases. All of these vaccines, even the ones in current development to fight against COVID, are of one of three types. Vaccines are based either on whole viruses, subunits, or genetic material. The first of these types, the whole virus vaccine, works by introducing millions of virions into the body, and there are three subcategories. First is the dead virus vaccine, which uses the actual virus that causes the disease being vaccinated against. The virus is subjected to high heat, radiation, or chemicals to render them useless, and although a proven method, they require special equipment and are time-consuming to manufacture the amount of virus necessary. The attenuated virus vaccines are very similar to dead virus vaccines. However, attenuated vaccines use virions that have simply been weakened or rendered inactive. They are not completely dead. Attenuated vaccines are not recommended for immunocompromised individuals because the weakened virus could still cause some sickness. The last of these vaccines are the vector vaccines. These use viruses that have been deemed safe to humans as vehicles to transfer specific proteins or genetic material of the target virus into the human body without risk of severe immune response. Since these vaccines use viruses that have been previously proven as safe, they can be developed relatively rapidly. The second type of virus only uses specific proteins that act as antigens. Although safer than vaccines that use a whole virus, these kinds are still intense to manufacture, as the target virus must first be grown, then broken into its parts and sifted for the specific antigen that is desired. Most children's vaccines are of this kind due to their inherent lack of risk. The last type of vaccine, and the newest kind to be developed, is those that use genetic material, most often called mRNA vaccines. These use the messenger RNA containing the genes for the desired antigens to produce an immune response. They carry the least amount of risk and are also coincidentally cheap and quick to manufacture. According to Dr. Anthony Komarov, mRNA vaccines can actually generate a stronger type of immunity. They stimulate the immune system to make antibodies and immune system killer cells. a double strike at the virus.
It is an extremely extensive and rigorous process to ensure that the COVID-19 vaccine can be administered safely to the public. Before being administered to the public, it must undergo a clinical trial to determine if the vaccine is effective at treating the illness, if it produces any harmful side effects, and if the vaccine's benefits outweigh the risk. There are 3 phases of clinical trials with rules set by the FDA to help determine safely if each vaccine can be approved. Due to the demand for the vaccine, it has been developed in record time, but scientists are still making sure to undergo all 3 phases of developing the vaccine and administering it to the public. The typical process first begins with vaccine candidates being selected for clinical trials. Fortunately, thousands of people have already volunteered to participate in these clinical trials for COVID-19. Phase 1 consisted of about 20 to 100 volunteers in total that were given the vaccine and monitored closely in order to see if the vaccine was safe, if it seemed to work, if there were any side effects, and also helped determine the safest, most effective dose. Phase 2 then consisted of several more volunteers, about a few hundred, and what they did was monitor the same things, but they also now began to monitor not only if the vaccine is safe, but also how the participants' immune systems are responding to the vaccine. In phase 3, the vaccine is then administered in mass to thousands of people. This phase is now monitoring how people who get the vaccine compare to those who receive the placebo, and also starts to gather the most common side effects in most people. Once clinical trials are complete, scientists then gather the data from all 3 phases to share with the FDA and the ACIP, which stands for the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, specifically the COVID-19 work group. These medical and public health officials from all over analyze all the data given to them and analyze the balance of benefits and harm and the type or quality of the evidence provided. Then, finally, helping us approve the administration of the COVID-19 vaccine to the public.
Of the approved vaccines available around the world, none of them are using the attenuated COVID-19 virus. The US-German collaborated Pfizer-BioNTech, Massachusetts-based Moderna, and AstraZeneca Oxford UK viruses are all of the mRNA type and encoded with the gene for the spike protein for the novel coronavirus. These are the first of these kind of vaccine to be developed and approved, albeit through emergency clearance for use on humans. The Russian Sputnik V and US Johnson & Johnson vaccines use adenovirus vectors to transfer the spike protein gene. Lastly, the Chinese-made Sinovac and Indian Covaxin are both inactivated virus vaccines. Elsewhere, antigen-based vaccines are being developed. Since at least March of 2020, close to 5,000 clinical trials have been started in an effort to find some treatment or cure to the novel coronavirus. Many consist of the design, development, and manufacture of vaccines. According to the World Health Organization, having lots of different vaccines in development increases the chances that there will be one or more successful vaccines that will be shown to be safe and efficacious for the intended prioritized populations. Thus, it is extremely important that many vaccine trials take place at once in order that any adverse reaction or complication is caught in a controlled and monitored environment. Because of this, a number of trials may be halted indefinitely or paused momentarily. 2 such trials were that of the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, and both were paused after participants developed an unexplained illness. After time was taken to study the participants and see if there was some link between the illness to the overall trials, they were both allowed to continue. This is a good show of continued medical ethics in this time of accelerated development, showing that even in times of high stress and necessity, researchers are taking the time to narrow down and eliminate any risk or adverse reaction.
It is important to discuss the safety of vaccinations and to understand the risks involved in receiving a vaccine. Some patients experience side effects after receiving the vaccine, such as a low-grade fever or discomfort. Most side effects can go away on their own and need no external aid to be reduced. Serious side effects include extreme allergic reactions or fainting spells, but these are very rare. Unfortunately, there's plenty of misleading information available about the risks of receiving a vaccination. One of the most common conspiracies is that vaccinations on newborns cause autism, but according to both the CDC and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, studies show that there are no correlations or links between receiving a vaccine and developing ASD. There's also no evidence that links vaccinations to infertility, and claims that COVID-19 vaccines transmit a microchip to patients has been fact-checked as false. Regardless, if you have received the COVID-19 vaccine and are experiencing side effects, you can report these symptoms to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. If you experience serious injury due to a vaccination, you are able to receive federal compensation. We encourage you to use trusted sources to acquire information about COVID-19 and vaccinations to prevent false information from causing harm to yourself and others.